Good afternoon. The country has now been in mourning for a week following the death of struggle icon Winnie Madikizela-Mandela. And many who knew her have been sharing their memories throughout the course of the past couple of days. I want to take you live now to Durban, where the IFP Leader Mangosuthu Buthelezi says it was a privilege to know Mama Winnie, and he joins us now in the Eastern City. Mr. Buthelezi, good afternoon to you and welcome. On your IFP website, you're quoted as saying, "I feel privileged to have known the late great Mrs. Mandela and to have been close to the family." Maybe as a starting point to our discussion, what was your relationship like?
Well, indeed, I had a very close relationship with Madiba in the first place. And when Madiba was a lawyer in Johannesburg, I could never come to his house without him, come to Johannesburg without him inviting me to the house. So at that time, he was married to Evelyn. So later on, of course, he married Mrs. Winnie Madikizela-Mandela. And very often they invited me to their house where I was entertained by her, where I got very close to both of them, in particular because each one of them was a freedom fighter in his right, in her own right. And we got very close. And of course, throughout her tribulations, I was in touch with her and her children, particularly with Her Excellency Zinzi, the daughter. And very often, when she had a visit to her husband in Robben Island and later in Polismo, they should always bring messages or letters to me from Madiba. So all the time that she suffered, I was in touch with her. Through all the persecution that the apartheid regime imposed on her, I was actually close to the family. And to the extent that I remember even some painful episodes, in the life of my late sister, Mama Mandela. When she was disowned by the UDF leaders, I was the only one who stood by her. And later when I became the president, I became the minister under President Mbeki, I remember an occasion when there was a function in Johannesburg where somehow the president was upset with her arrival, and she tried to greet him, and she unfortunately pushed her cap off, and I had to pick it up and put it on her head. So all the time, of course, even testified by herself in her book, the latest book that she has written, she has stated, about the long road that we traveled, not only with her, but also with her great husband, because she was an icon in her own right. I mean, she was respected, of course, because she was the wife of our icon, Miss Mandela, but she was also respected in her own right as an icon who actually fought very gallantly for our liberation.
Mr. Buthelezi, you also write about, and I want to take you back to Vilakazi Street in Soweto, and you write that the three of you would talk politics, sport, family and music until late into the night, and I'm sure all of us in our mind's eye can imagine that. But the political discourse, the political conversation that you were having at the time with the two of them, what do you recall about that?
Well, I recall the many occasions because both of them were actually very fond of music. And I remember actually many happy occasions when, just the three of us were there, when actually we enjoyed very lovely food, because the woman, I always said, even in Parliament, she could cook. She cooked very salivating meals, which we enjoyed with Madiba. But there were some occasions also when there were distinguished guests, such as King Sabata Dalinjebo, whom I met also, because he was related to the family. I also met him at Vilakazi Street in the house of Mr. and Miss Mandela. So I really recall with great emotion. Those were happy occasions, before both of them, walked the very hard and harsh road where they were persecuted by the apartheid regime. Madiba, of course, incarcerated, and she persecuted in so many 101 ways which I cannot count, which everyone knows, because it's an important history of our country, how this lady, Galadi, stood up to the apartheid regime. I had really great respect for her and really loved her as a sister and also as one of my leaders.
That's a very sad and a very poignant recollection, Mr. Buthelezi. You've just said to me that she and her family making this exceptional contribution to freedom in South Africa. Do you think you could try and articulate for me what you think that contribution was?
I think her contribution stands by itself. It's a unique contribution that she made. First of all, I don't think that I can have anyone who is a peer to her as far as just courage is concerned. Because, I mean, it took a lot of courage not to be intimidated by the harsh apartheid regime, as she was in the various ways, when they interrogated her, when they arrested her, when she was exiled, to the Free State, to Brantford, and when she was actually detained without trial at times, and also when she went so many trials, actually, even when she hadn't done anything wrong. So I don't think that I know anyone who has suffered, whom I can say suffered more than our sister and leader, Nomzamo Winnie Mandela.
Mr. Buthelezi,
I really think that she was an inspiration. Her life was an inspiration to all of us.
Just a final question to you. There are so few of that generation left on the political stage in South Africa. It doesn't matter what political party they are from. Would you say then that as that generation starts to depart, the political discourse, the landscape, the thought in this country is a lot poorer, or are you confident in a new generation of political leaders?
Can you repeat the question? I don't quite get...
My question to you is that so many veteran political leaders in this country are starting to leave the stage. And my question to you is, we have a new crop, a new generation of political leaders taking to the fore. Are you confident in their ability to pick up the baton?
Well, I think I am confident because it must be remembered that many of us were members of the African National Congress, and that I myself was close to Madiba because I was a member of the African National Congress, and that I worked, under Ms. Mandela as leader of ANC Youth League, from my time at the University of Fort Hare and later. And after that, I worked under Inkosi Albert Luthuli, and there are some people, actually, there are very few people of our generation. I remember my brother here, Mr. Mlangeni, who was actually incarcerated with Ms. Mandela at Robben Island. And I would say, therefore, I'm confident that, that there are a few people who can actually take the baton. But of course, we are asking this question at a very difficult time when there are schisms in the liberation movement in the ANC National Congress. So actually, I think that what Dr. Seme and other leaders, Dr. Kuma, whom I also knew very closely, and other leaders, and Inkosi Thuli, my mentor, did, I think that so far, I don't think that the legacy they left to us will actually be lost. But actually, there is a danger, of course, of it just now, because all of you know that in the oldest liberation movement, ANC, there is no real calm and peace at present, and all kinds of schisms seem to be taking place. For instance, I would say that the present leader of the ANC, Mr. Ramaphosa, I have full confidence in him. Unless, of course, he is drowned by all the divisions and schisms that are taking place in the party. But as I know him, I have no doubt that he'll carry on with the baton. I don't doubt that. But I know that it's very difficult, of course, as you know, that there are all sorts of divisions which actually have distressed most of us who grew up in the African National Congress.
Leader of the Inkatha Freedom Party, Mangosuthu Buthelezi, live for Newsday in Durban. Thank you very much indeed.